I'm Rob,
I'm John,
and this is the Min One Podcast.
where we talk all things NFTs and the rise of blockchain gaming.
In 2021, we spoke about what the Metaverse is. Are we any closer to understanding?
Not really. Let's discuss.
So, in preparation for this episode, I was at the gym and I decided, rather than listening to music, I would listen to the episode.
Interesting.
It was our fourth episode. It was at the end of 2021, I think late November, early December. And to be honest, it was a pretty good episode. Given how I won't listen to episode number 2, I've kind of thought that all the first 10 episodes maybe would be like really rough, but it's pretty clean. It's a good episode. I don't want to preface this episode too much with this awful statement, but I don't know how much we've come along in terms of definitions since then. A lot of the things we said are still true, and a lot of the confusion is still there. But I think it's an interesting topic to revisit just based on how much mainstream adoption of the term there has been. Because back then was roughly when Meta, used to be called Facebook, and then it became Meta. This was around that time that we made this episode. Since then, the word is, everywhere. Every company's using it in every term. It's a buzzword. So, although crypto moves really quickly, it doesn't feel like the Metaverse has. Have you noticed any major changes in the last 18 months?
To be blunt, not really. I think back when we recorded...
Thanks for joining us, guys. Bye.
Okay. Yeah, see you around. I think when we recorded our episode back in 2021, it was all about the sandbox and Decentraland, and... We
don't actually talk about the sandbox.
Interesting.
No, we don't talk about sandbox. We don't really reference many projects that are Metaverse projects per se. It was a bit more conceptual.
Well, I think a lot... In terms of the most popular metaverses out there, I think a lot has changed, and there's a lot that people are looking forward to. Like, for the most part, Decentraland has fallen by the wayside. Sandbox is still going strong, but now you've got Other Side, and you've got various game projects coming out that claim that they're metaverses, because of course they do. You've got the Maple Story universe, which technically... I wouldn't really even call it a metaverse, but that's a point of contention. But that just illustrates the problem. We've gotten no closer to really defining what a metaverse is. I shared with you earlier today a document from the UK government where they are trying to classify NFTs and metaverses and all this kind of thing from a trademarking point of view.
Yeah.
And their definition of a metaverse is, first off, they didn't define it. they didn't say a metaverse is X. So just like, it's kind of like video conferencing, but in an online space. But you can also message people, and it's used for different. They didn't even try. Yeah. And I think that just solidifies kind of where we are right now with metaverses, and that from a purely definitions-led point of view, I don't think we've made much progress over the past 18 months.
No, I don't think we have. A lot of the descriptions we used were from people like Kathy Hackle, and I think they're broadly correct still. I've seen a few... I had a look at recent articles trying to describe what the metaverse is, and... several of them kind of skirted around the sentence of 3D version of the internet, which I think is probably fair enough. But the point I want to first drive home is how awful the use of the word metaverse has become. In the past, I think it's the past 6 months, it's been driving me up the wall. I wrote an article yesterday or day before, about FIFA. They've been kind of working in blockchain for a while. They partnered with Algorand like 2 years ago. They've not really done anything. Obviously, they split ways with EA Games. So FIFA, the yearly football game, is now going to be EA Team or EA Sports FC or something like that. So it's completely changed. And FIFA is exploring its own options. And they've been partnering with developers, and basically they've partnered with this AI 4v4 strategy football game that was originally released for the World Cup, and now they've paid them to turn it into an officially licensed game by FIFA.
Right.
It's still called the World Cup AI game, even though it's referencing the Qatar World Cup, which is confusing. Miles too late, but whatever. The game looks interesting enough, but what annoys me, it's made by Altered State Machine, which is a Web3 developer, and they are integrating NFTs into it, so it's quite cool. You know, FIFA has officially licensed a Web3 game. That's the banner headline. But the thing that was annoying me about Altered State's description of the game is it was bringing football to the metaverse. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. You're making a game officially licensed by FIFA with NFTs. That's cool. Okay, that's cool. I'll allow that. But what has it got to do with the metaverse? What people are now using the word metaverse just whenever anything uses blockchain or NFTs in any way, shape, or form. They will use the word metaverse as kind of like a synonym for Web3 or crypto. It's really winding me up.
I think it's become like the term Web3, except Web3 is usually used correctly.
Web3 is so broad that you it's kind of all encompassing, whereas metaverse is trying to describe something pretty specific. And just saying it's bringing football to the metaverse means less than nothing. I think that actually confuses me more than before you said that.
Yeah, it's just marketing and buzzwords, and it's not helpful. It feels similar to when every blockchain game was a play-to-earn game.
Yeah.
And then that phrase died a death. And I mean, I don't know if I necessarily want to see the term metaverse die a death, but
no,
I think on its current path it probably will.
It needs defining.
Yeah, absolutely. But nobody can agree on a definition for it. I mean, if you type define metaverse into Google, it says metaverse, a virtual reality space in which users can interact with a computer-generated environment and other users. So, technically, would that make every multi-person experience on VR a metaverse? Would that mean Beat Saber multiplayer is now a metaverse? Does that? I don't see.
Yeah,
It's such a loose definition.
We've talked about this a lot. I can't remember if I wrote an article for you or for Token Gamer about tying VR to the metaverse. Just seems like a bad move because VR has been 15 years coming. The next big thing is still not there. And it still doesn't feel that close. And when we were talking about it 18 months ago in this episode, and we're talking about how VR will fit into the picture. And I feel like in the last 18 months, we are 0% closer to VR and the metaverse interacting in any meaningful way. In fact, I don't even feel VR has come along that much. I'm not big into it. You are more into VR than me. But do you feel we've made any strides in 18 months?
Not particularly. I mean, you've got the MetaQuest Pro now, but unless you're prepared to shell a month's wage or several months' wages on a VR headset, you're not going to have experienced it or used it.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking, I think it was several episodes ago, about some VR headsets that are looking to come out later this year, but honestly, it doesn't look like there's much that's going to much for people like me to experience this year. Like, I mean, cool, I can smell my VR environment, great. I'm not sure what tangible benefit
sort of games I play, I don't want to smell the environment.
pretty much. But yeah, I don't really think there has been any progress. And I mean, I think back in 2021 when Facebook was turning into Meta and they were making this big VR push, there was a lot of I mean, it was a bullish time in the market. I think there was a lot of hope that Facebook would come out with something, really solid, really quickly, and they would become this the pinnacle of the metaverse, like they became the pinnacle of social media. But it hasn't happened, and if anything, they've pulled back from I guess some of the promises they've made about the metaverse. I mean, they're still investing heavily in that area, but they're being very open with how much money they're losing and how that's affecting the wider business.
Got a choice.
So, yeah, I mean, they're losing their traditional business, so they've got to do something. So piling money into the metaverse is one way to do that, I suppose.
Yeah, it's strange. You mentioned about certain games. Are they metaverses? It comes close. I was thinking. So I've thought about this a lot, and I think I was thinking about it after the episode we recorded, and even the sandbox, which, for the record, is the closest thing to the metaverse I've seen so far. Is it a metaverse? Is it not? I mean, is it? How is it more of a metaverse than Roblox?
Yeah, or World of Warcraft. Or...
Yeah, and I know you could say, you'll go, well, they don't have blockchain, they don't have NFTs. I don't think that defines the metaverse.
No, to be honest, I don't think I've seen a definition where people are insistent that the metaverse has anything to do with blockchain.
No, but I think blockchain, it's complicated because I think blockchain is important to the metaverse,
yes,
because we want it to be decentralized, trustless, blah, 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 blah. We want true ownership of items, which I think is crucial, by the way, to being a citizen in the metaverse, in whatever that means. I think true ownership is important to that. But I can't work out how the sandbox is more of a metaverse than Roblox, other than just true ownership. But that's just a blockchain game. A blockchain game has that. It's confusing, and it harks back to the question we talk a lot about in that episode, which is a metaverse versus the metaverse.
Yeah. Is
there loads? And in what way is that a metaverse? Because to me, that doesn't make sense.
I mean, it's since that episode, we obviously went, we were both at, was it Blockchain Gaming London last year? Web3 London? One of those Tech Circus events, where the topic of the metaverses came up quite a lot. Yeah. And I think by that point, the consensus was that there would be a metaverse.
Yeah.
And that, there'd be all this interoperability, and you could take an item from, one developer and put it in another. And I mean, we talked in a few episodes ago about Dr. Disrespect's take on that and how it's not very helpful. Everybody talks about a metaverse in the same way they talk about the blockchain, or just blockchain in general, where it's blockchain encompasses so many different protocols and infrastructures and NFTs and all sorts of things, and the same thing goes for metaverses. Like, there's not a metaverse, there's many different companies making what they hope will be the metaverse, and I don't think any of them necessarily has a leg up on the other. I mean, the sandbox has done great so far, but like you say, I mean, quite frankly, the player numbers aren't there, and yes, they have all these brands on board, but are they the metaverse? I wouldn't say that they are. I'd say something like Other Side is probably much closer to that, purely because, I mean, they've only had 2 playtests so far. They had their most recent one, I think it was last week, had 7,000 people join, and by all means, it was a success. But would I even call that a metaverse? I don't really know. I think I've struggled to call, the sandbox, Other Side, etc., a quote-unquote metaverse when you have online worlds that people can join with or without a VR headset, that are more lively, have more players, have more interactivity, are more useful, for lack of a better term, and are more fun, quite frankly, than a lot of the metaverse projects we currently have out there. So, yeah, it's a tough one for me.
Yeah, it is. So one thing I said in that episode, which I now think so you can tell as I'm speaking, I'm kind of making up my opinion as I'm saying it. Yeah. But I had the thoughts before that episode, and now, 18 months later, I think I'm far stronger on this opinion, and that was that we are building components of the metaverse and calling them metaverses, but the metaverse, I think your analogy with blockchain is kind of right, even though we can't point to anything like we can with blockchain. When we talk about blockchain, we're talking about the technology, not a specific chain. And I think it's kind of the same, although we can't point to a technology like we can with blockchain. I think metaverse is similar. And I coined a phrase in that episode I'd completely forgotten about, which I want to bring back. I was calling them meta galaxies within the metaverse. And that is kind of what it feels like. The analogy I used was, you wouldn't say Amazon is the internet. You would say it's a major website on the internet. And I think that's how we'll see things like the metaverse. We will see, the sandbox is a key part of the metaverse, but the metaverse is the umbrella term for everything under it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
think
I think you're pretty spot on there. I remember one of my panels at Blockchain Gaming London was centered specifically around metaverses, and
Yeah.
we had Ben Gersel, who's a world-leading AI expert. We had some legal people on the team. We also had, I believe, one of the members of the, I think it was the Sandbox team, that was on that panel as well. And I asked some deliberately quite tough questions to try and ascertain, is it possible? Is it technically possible in any way, shape, or form, whether it's from a computing basis or a cooperability basis, for the metaverse to exist? And I heard a lot of, well, hey, we're working together on this. There's I can't remember the name of the authority now, but it was founded by the Sandbox and Alien Worlds and a few other projects last year. And there's a lot of promise to work together to create the metaverse, but as far as I can tell, there's been very little, if no, tangible steps to actually make that a reality. I suppose to this day, you don't say that. For example, Gucci hasn't partnered with the metaverse. They've partnered with other side. How HSBC has partnered with the Sandbox. They've not partnered with the metaverse. It's still a very fractured space, and it's like the land grab phase for NFTs back in 2021. There's just lots of projects competing for what they claim is free land at the moment, and some are doing quite well, some aren't doing so well. But I think I wouldn't even include other side here. I think we're yet to see what the first big metaverse project will be, because as I said, I don't think I count the Sandbox and Decentraland within that, and I'm hesitant to say other side will be the defining metaverse either. So I think with all the developers and Web 2 folk coming into Web 3, we're probably closer to one of these projects really becoming the defining metaverse, but at the moment it's very difficult to tell where we're headed.
Yeah, I'm still not sure there's going to be a breakout moment. And I also don't know if it makes sense for there to be a breakout moment when it's not one thing that's going to be the metaverse. So I think it's probably just going to be a slow burn where lots of things start working together. One area I have done a complete 180 on since that episode 18 months ago is about interoperability. Now, we kind of mentioned it earlier, where it is ridiculously idealistic to believe that everything will just work in every game, and that's how you buy something and that skin travels around, because there's no industry standard for game engines or sizes of things, and it doesn't make sense to do that. But I do think we will be heading towards something like that, where obviously the benefit of owning it is you take it out of the game. You own it separate to that game, and if that runs independently to the game, then in what way does it run independently? Is it just that you have it outside the game? Because what does that actually mean? What's the utility of that? There needs to be some value other than just selling it or buying more. You need to be able to use it elsewhere. And I'll tell you what, have you seen the lecture by, it's not really a lecture, it's just a brief talk by Tim Sweeney of Epic Games at GDC?
I have not, no.
So we'll link it in the show notes, because I'm writing an article about it at the moment. It's seriously good. It's one of the reasons I like Epic Games so much is that I think Tim Sweeney has a very good handle on what blockchain can do and what the metaverse could be, whereas I don't think a lot of other people do. And he brings up this brilliant point I'd never thought of, which is he's saying so the problem at the moment with gaming is walled gardens. Like, we always talk about these walled gardens where everything stays within its own ecosystem, right? And he said that was the case with networks. Everything was a private network until the internet, and the internet was like this open system that was built so you could get past these walled gardens, and so that it was inclusive. And he said they started working back at the start of the internet on open standards. So you would have things like Java, and the @ symbol would mean emails can connect to other providers, which wasn't previously possible. And Java meant that you could create something on one website and use it on another, and anyone can see it on every website. And he's essentially saying that we're at that point again, where we need to create an open system, and we're in a closed system. And I just love this point. I just think that is exactly what we need to do. And perhaps people are overselling interoperability, and it's a bit idealistic, but we do need to head towards that point where when we build stuff, we should build it with a view that it can work in multiple places. And that's most of what his talk is about, and how that it's essentially centered around the creator economy, which is, I think this talk we'll link in the show notes. You really, really should watch it. He's just got such a good handle on it.
I think it's very important that someone in a position of Tim Sweeney is along those lines as well, because, for the longest time, whether it's in gaming or otherwise, the trend was to, build up an audience and create a walled garden, and then, reap the harvest from that walled garden for as long as you can do. Whereas Web3, at least idealistically, is a whole different ball game where, there's this expectation that you build things for the benefit of everybody. And of course, you need to create your revenue streams. You need to create ways in which you and your team can continue building, and whoever your investors are can get a return. But the gist of it is that you're contributing to a wider ecosystem, a wider idea, a wider space, rather than building these closed blockchains as one example of what we don't want to see in Web3. I think, just going back to kind of the popular metaverses of today, I don't recall what I said back in the 2021 episode. I haven't listened to it, but I think at the time it was, I would imagine, collaborations coming thick and fast with the likes of, the Sandbox and Decentraland, etc. Would that be correct?
We didn't mention much on specific projects, as I said, but there was a lot. There was a lot of interest. So we were starting to see partnerships. Yeah.
I think around about that time there was a lot of, this bank is now in the Sandbox, and this entertainment brand is now in the Metaverse, and it didn't really mean much, but there was a lot of that coming around. Whereas, we're recording this on April the 5th. Gucci's Other Side of Relics launch on Other Side on April the 6th, so tomorrow. But as far as I can recall, that's the only big brand metaverse partnership I can think of in the last 6 months. I think unless I'm missing some obvious ones, there's definitely been a slowdown, at least I feel, of big brand interest in being a part of the metaverse. I think back in 21 and probably through early 22, there was a lot of, as a brand, we need to be seen as forward thinking. We need to be in the metaverse. We need to strike partnerships, and I think that's cooled off a lot. And again, I think it goes back to the fact that nobody really knows what the metaverse is, and I think it's starting to, even as a buzzword. I think if you got to the point where FIFA are using it to describe something that patently isn't a metaverse, it's probably already on the downtrend, or at least not that I hope metaverse is starting to fade away as a term, but it's not helpful at the very least.
No, it's pretty confusing. I think when it comes to these brands collaborating, so they were obviously collaborating in a bull market because it was great marketing. Now, so even with the other side, that is still great marketing because of the pool. Yuga Labs, Bored Apes, the pool that they have is so big that it's still probably very good marketing. But when it comes to partnering with these metaverse projects, whatever they might be, what is the point from the brand's perspective? I'm not trying to be horrible or blunt or pessimistic, but what's the point? What are they getting from it? Because if it isn't marketing, it isn't anything. There's no interoperability really between these projects at the moment, so that the items are locked in a walled garden. Whether the garden might not have any walls, but you can't leave it, so it doesn't matter. And so what's the point in these brands doing it? I don't see what would they get out of it.
I think I don't mean to single out the Sandbox in this episode. I mean, we've had Sebastian on the podcast before, so you know we have some admiration for him and his team. But obviously I don't know what the terms of partnerships were, but I would imagine a lot of the companies that partnered with Sandbox back in the day, part of it was, you know, this need to be seen to be forward thinking and being in this new realm. But I would imagine some of it must be, you know, financial. And I don't mean that, you know, Sandbox is paying them. I mean that they probably thought that by entering the metaverse, it's a new revenue stream for them, and it could reap all of these rewards in a financial sense. And I think for particular projects, again, I'm not going to single out Sandbox, but for certain projects, that hasn't been the case. I think for projects like Other Side, which, I mean, what's the floor price of an ape now? It's still over 100k, I think. I think there's more of an incentive for example, luxury brands or any brand really to partner with a project like Yuga Labs and Other Side, because you're tapping into a community of people that you know for certain have dispensable income.
Sure.
You know, whether you own a bored ape or mutant ape or even a piece of Other Side land, you have at the very least several $1,000s to spend on digital pictures, so it might be worth it from that point of view. But I think it's tricky. Because that only applies to a subset of projects, and it clearly isn't, or at least I don't think indicative of wider, you know, Web2 brands. I think moving into the space. I mean, I hold a Cool Cat and a few other NFTs in that ecosystem. They held a raffle in Milk Token, which is the token of that ecosystem. And one of the rewards was Taco Bell gift cards. Now, I don't know whether that was as part of a partnership or they literally thought, screw it, we'll just buy 50 Taco Bell gift cards and give them away. But that's a much more approachable partnership for the average person. You know, and I think, or I'd like to see at least more approachable partnerships in that realm come into the Web3 space. Like, for example, this probably won't happen, but imagine, let's say McDonald's partners with the Sandbox, and whoever visits their digital Mackies gets a discount code or a token or, I don't know, a Monopoly sticker or something. I mean, there's so many ways to make this engaging and to deepen that relationship between a brand and its customers through the metaverse. And it's just made me think, actually, I think in terms of that essence of connectivity between brands and connecting with their audiences, I don't think there's been much progress in the past 18 months. You know, back in the end of 2021, it was like, oh, hey, HSBC has a virtual bank in the Sandbox, or this brand has a particular zone in this game themed around them. And I think even today, it's all this kind of surface level, vague marketing stuff. There's nothing to grab the attention of the average Joe or to make them want to jump into these metaverses and give them a reason to check it out.
Yeah, I think there are two reasons for that. You're 100% right. It's all surface stuff at the moment. And even if McDonald's were to implement that, you know, visit us in the Sandbox and we'll give you a Big Mac in real life, I think even if they were to do that, it's still surface. People would pop in there, get their voucher and pop out again and never return. I think you wouldn't see much user retention. And this isn't a criticism of the Sandbox or any game. It could be Decentraland, it could be anything. This isn't a criticism of that. So I think there's two reasons. One, it's still very early in the development of metaverse projects and blockchain games and the whole Web3 space. So there isn't enough there yet. It feels like we've been saying that forever, but it's only been a maximum of 5 years, less than 5 years. So we're still very early in the building phase. And number two, I think when we talk about the metaverse, we really want to knit together experiences. And at the moment, they're still disparate and they're not remotely knitted together. And this is actually something that Tim Sweeney talks about in that lecture where he says the metaverse is an opportunity to connect all current ecosystems. And by building industry standards that we can all adhere to, and obviously Unity and Unreal Engine are like the two big players in game engines, and they collaborate all the time. Like they work together. They're not. They don't even. I don't even think they see each other as rivals. They actually work together on quite a few things. So we're probably a long way off it being where these experiences, these games are using something that's an industry standard, and you can start to knit stuff together where perhaps on the walk to the in-game McDonald's you pass a few other things and you're like, oh cool, I want to go and have a look at that. Nike's been doing all sorts of stuff about like NFT trainers and things. Perhaps you walk past a Nike shop and you're like, oh, I really would like my avatar to have that. And then as soon as your avatar can wander out of the sandbox and into Decentraland or into other side and still be wearing those trainers, this is the interoperability thing, then everything becomes more interesting. And we talk in that episode about how 18 months ago kids have stopped asking for things like clothes. Well, as much, obviously it's not absolute, but it's less common that they're asking for clothes and more common they're asking for like V-Bucks or something that they can spend on in-game because they spend so much time playing these games that it becomes important to them, which I mean I get. I've been playing MMOs for Christ knows how long. If I didn't have control of my own money, I can imagine asking my parents, oh, I'd love to get this skin in this game. Can I have it for my birthday? That doesn't seem weird to me at all. But just on a sort of related point, one of the things Tim Sweeney says is today's game engines could be tomorrow's browsers. And I think that's a really cool point, that essentially if the metaverse is a 3D internet, like an extension of real life, the world's becoming more and more digital. This is the next step where you have an instantation of yourself in the internet. I think that could end up being true. And that's really crazy to think about because that is the ultimate interoperability. Once browsers are just your gateway into the internet, and game engines could just simply be a gateway into the metaverse. There's so many cool points. It's like a 9-minute talk, and it is 9 minutes of solid, interesting points.
You're hard selling the Tim Sweeney keynote here, but
big fan.
I think you've convinced me. I think I'll be going to watch it after this podcast. But I mean, if that's his thoughts on engines being browsers effectively, then I'm looking forward to Unreal Engine 6.
Can you even imagine what that's going to be? Have you seen this is a bit of a tangent, but whatever, we're gamers. Have you seen the 5.2 update where it does procedurally generated environments in real time? So
it looks incredible.
You can wander indefinitely in a game and it will keep randomly generating places for you to... that's incredible. That if No Man's Sky can harness that, then suddenly it becomes the thing it promised. Like you've just got... It's literally unlimited, the number of places you can see and go, and that's... Yeah, we're pretty close to something very cool, I think.
Yeah. No, I think UE6 could potentially bring that kind of ideal of the metaverse to reality. And going back to what you were saying, I think you basically described the quintessential metaverse. When I picture metaverse, I think a GTA 5 level environment where you have your house and you leave your house and you are effectively just playing a game. And like you would in GTA 5, you enter a shop. And let's say you can purchase clothes, but oh wait, they're not just virtual clothes. You can buy, you can walk into a virtual Nike shop, and you can buy, some trainers or a shirt for your virtual character. But it also delivers that item physically to your house. I think if we can get to that stage with metaverses, then we really have turned a corner and crossed the Rubicon, so to speak, and entered into a whole new realm of possibilities. But I think we're some time away from that. And I think it will take advancements such as Unreal Engine 6 and other engines and probably GPT-5 and other developments for that sort of metaverse future to become a reality.
Yeah, so one thing I think is important to note is that the likes of Epic Games, and again he says this in the talk, is that they're building tools and creator tools and elements that are going to be used in the metaverse. So things that will probably be a feature of UE6, but they're deploying them straight away. As soon as they're finished, they're deploying them. So there isn't going to be that one moment where like, oh my God, UE6 is out, the metaverse is live. It's like, wait, I'm actually going shopping online in a digital place now. this is kind of crazy. When did this happen? Like it just, I think it's going to be extremely organic.
Well, they've started that rollout. I mean, it was only 2 weeks ago that they introduced the Unreal Editor, allowing people to create and publish experiences directly to Fortnite.
Yeah.
And I can remember at least thinking back in 21, whether or not I mentioned it in the podcast episode or not, that if Epic Games were to become this metaverse powerhouse, would they or would they not use Fortnite as the basis for that? And judging by the creator tools that they're now releasing, and Tim Sweeney's comments at GDC, and where the future of the Epic Games umbrella looks like it's going, it could very well be that Fortnite is the basis for what they hope is, quote unquote, the metaverse. And I think they're very well placed in order to do that, because whereas Facebook started off from a basis of, very stuck in Web 2. We create web pages, we show them to you, it's user-generated content, blah, blah, blah. And they were entering a very new realm with their, rebranding to Meta and trying to create the metaverse, etc. Fortnite basically is a metaverse. Like, you wouldn't hear anyone describe Fortnite as a metaverse, really. But, it has millions of players. They all interact with one another. There is an economy there. Yes, it is a gated economy and you can't trade skins, etc. But they have all the components to make that work. And they've shown over the past few years with the various virtual concerts they've done that they can put on very compelling virtual experiences. So if they can tie all of that up into, a persistent 3D environment where there are virtual concerts and you can own a house or you can go shopping, etc., I think they're very well placed to become the leaders in the metaverse space.
Yeah. I've got 3 points if I can remember them after I start saying the first one, because I'll probably get excited. So the first is that this is one of the reasons I think Epic Games is going to be a key player, is that when most people talk about the creator economy, I feel like it's disingenuous. I feel like they're looking at that market fee that they would get from everything. That's how they're positioning themselves. Whereas Tim Sweeney, I was making maps for Unreal Tournament in the early 2000s on one of the first Unreal editors. He's always seen what the creator part of gaming is to gaming. It's a very important part, and perhaps they lost their way a little bit and now finding their way back with things like the Fortnite, with the Unreal Editor for Fortnite. But he basically says in this talk that the creator economy is the main part. Without saying it specifically, the creators are the primary beneficiary of the metaverse. The creator economy is what's going to make it very special. And I think when a lot of people say that, I become a bit suspicious, because places like Facebook essentially monetized created content. Like, if you created something, they were kind of monetizing it. Whereas I don't feel like Epic Games have done it to the same degree. So when they talk about that, that's exciting. Point 2 is you talked about how many millions of people log on to Fortnite. The monthly users he rattles off are wild. Roblox has 200 million monthly users. Fortnite has 70 million. Minecraft has 100 million. And they reckon there's around 600 million monthly users across these kind of metaverse type games. And it's on a trajectory that it will be in the billions by the end of this decade, which is, just wild. It's whether the metaverse plays out like we think it will or not, doesn't matter, because something bigger needs to house all this. There's too many people. There's too much opportunity. And it's crazy. And I can't remember my third point exactly as I thought I would.
You said you was going to forget one, so there we go. I think to a lot of the naysayers who say metaverses came out of the blue and we don't need them, and it's just a waste of time, it's a waste of people's work, trying to make metaverses become a thing, especially over the last 5 years. Although I would argue, especially since Minecraft first took off, in 09, that sounds so weird to say, 2009 and 2010, that we've seen the rise of metaverse-like experiences. We just haven't called them metaverses until it became a buzzword 2 or 3 years ago. You know, Minecraft was the first game, and there's still multiplayer Minecraft servers that see tens of thousands of daily players that have in-game economies. Yes, it's just, you know, play a game, you can earn a currency, you can then spend that currency on skins or access to things or whatever. But there's an essence of an economy there, and the same with Fortnite. Although, of course, as I said, their economy is more kind of walled gardens in that respect. But more so Roblox, which, man, Roblox feels like it's been around forever. I remember playing it when I was a kid. Obviously, it wasn't the fleshed out experience it is today, but that to me is possibly in an idealistic sense, the closest to a metaverse we have, where people create their own experiences and then get a share of the profit effectively from people that visit the experiences and play on them as well. So, yeah, I think Epic Games are incredibly well placed, and we already have the foundations for metaverses here. I think we have a gist of what they might look like, what we might expect, what we might see, but there are compatibility, cooperability barriers, probably some technical hardware barriers to overcome as well. I don't think there's very much stopping a company like Epic from releasing a fully fledged metaverse experience today if they really wanted to. I just don't think the market is prepared for that, and I think Tim Sweeney in particular would feel he's going to be too early. You know, we had a couple of blockchain games, like we did websites back in the day that were just before their time, and we think, if you'd left it a year, if you'd left it 2 years, you'd have been onto a winner, but it was just too early. Google Glass springs to mind for that. I don't know why. Maybe that's something that we can... Yeah, but I kind of think... I thought that was cool at the time. I never got to experience it, but, you know, I think that kind of, you know, AR tech side is something that is, at the moment, having a lot more, you know, investment and research put into it, and, you know, maybe Google can take a second stab at it at some point. But, yeah, we're at a weird moment. I think we started the first half of this podcast by saying, hey, not much has changed, really. You know, it seems like there's been a bit of a slowdown from the big brands, and what we have in our hands today is not much different to what we had 18 months ago. But when you look at the bigger picture and you look at, you know, what happened at GDC, not just with Tim Sweeney, but with the coverage for Web3 gaming in general, which we talked about last episode, and just this general kind of feeling in the industry that, yes, you know, bear markets and, you know, not much to talk about right now, but there's very clearly important people in important places, in important companies that are looking to the metaverse as their future. And whilst the big brands might have taken a back seat, I think the people that are going to be building that future, you know, the Epic Games, the Riot Games, etc. of the world, are taking concrete steps towards building the ideal metaverse that we all imagined back in 2021. So
yeah, I think just to sort of end, I think that if Epic Games were to release, I think their next big project isn't a new game. I think it's interoperability between the games they already have, which it sounds like that's what they're building. And I think that changes everything, because they've already got a lot of intellectual property under their control. They've got a lot of major games, and their Epic Games Store is genuinely starting to rival Steam, which people didn't think it ever would, but it's getting that way. So I think that'll be the next major change. While you were speaking, I remembered my third point. It now feels desperately unrelated, but I'll just say it quickly. We were talking about land and land value, like metaverse land, and people confused about why it's worth so much. And we kind of tried to explain it away. And I think now I have a much better, 18 months later, I have a much better understanding. People were very confused about why you would buy digital land, because you're like, well, you can just make infinite amounts of digital land. That misses the point completely. And I was kind of screaming at myself to say it. You miss the point completely, because there's always going to be a hub. There's always going to be a central hub where people go. Look at any MMO, look at any major game. People all congregate in one place. And if you can get land around that one place, it's valuable. Because it doesn't matter that you can have infinite land elsewhere. You essentially could, I mean, it's a tongue-in-cheek point, but you could build a house anywhere in the universe, but no one can get to it and no one's visiting, so who cares? And it's the same sort of thing. You know, there's a reason why my house is near a train station and not in the middle of the countryside. You want it near stuff, and if like these companies, like say Gucci or Nike, they open a store. Say the Sandbox. Sandbox feels like a reasonably good bet right now. Let's say they team up with Epic Games. It becomes the hub for Fortnite players. They can all hang out in the Sandbox, whatever. And that major hub, and Nike and Gucci have stores exactly around that center square where everyone jumps around waiting for their mates to come online. Amazing. That is invaluable. Like in how valuable that is to that company and what it could mean in terms of revenue and brand awareness and blah blah blah. So yeah, I want to throw that point in there.
Yeah, no, that's the gold standard for sure. And I think a lot of the partnerships we've seen to date are a lot of the bigger companies trying to predict where those hotspots are going to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of people seem to think it's Sandbox. Will it be? Won't it be? Don't know. But there's certainly more options out there now. Even though, as I said, when it comes to the number of big Metaverse-esque projects, you think other side, Sandbox, Decentraland, that's probably the top three. There's certainly going to be more coming down the line, and I certainly think Epic Games and other companies will come out with their variations and try to drive their users towards that. You were talking a bit about operability there very quickly. They've been onboarding a lot of Web3 games to the Epic Games Store, and I'm wondering whether that factors into part of their plans to create this
possibly
metaverse, or to create some sort of interoperability between all the games that they're bringing on board. I think that would be very interesting for sure.
I don't know if they have any stipulations on what can be listed. I don't know if maybe you've had to use Unreal Engine in some way, or perhaps that's one of the stipulations is there has to be some sort of window for interoperability. I kind of hope it is. I'm not sure it is, but yeah, that does seem like a path.
I don't remember. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I think a lot of the Web3 games they have on the store are built in
Unreal Engine.
UE5.
Yeah.
Or, UE4.
Forgerina is.
Yeah. Grit is, I believe.
Yeah. It looks Unreal Engine.
Blancos? Not sure.
No idea. That's too stylized to be able to tell. It looks kind of more Unity, but who knows?
But let's say if they bring out UE6. I mean, it wasn't that long ago UE5 came out. No. Let's say they bring out UE6 and it enables interoperability between games built on that engine, then that's a huge win for Epic to have all those games on their store in the first place. But there we go. Yeah, I think it's been a good episode. It's been nice to revisit the topic of metaverses, and
it's getting to that point now where there's been enough time elapsed from those early episodes that we can revisit the topic and see what's changed, which is quite cool.
Yeah, and as I said, it at first felt like not much had changed, but when you take a more macro look and see who in the space is talking, there's a lot more to it than you first think. So
yeah, I think physically, not physically, but physically nothing's changed. But digitally nothing's changed, but in terms of our understanding and how we look at things, I think that has evolved quite a lot in 18 months.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, hey, there we go, episode 62 of the Mint One podcast. Rob, where can we find you?
Look at camera. You can find me at tokengamer.io for all the latest blockchain gaming news. Our app has the beta of Polygon now rolled out, so type Token Gamer into iOS App Store or Google Play, and test that. If you've got any Polygon NFTs, please test it for us and let us know how good it is and if there's anything you want to change. I know I couldn't believe how many people were pinging me when notifications went down on our app. I'm honestly, I was genuinely happy to be pinged so much because I didn't realize how many people were using the app daily. And we ended up looking at some of the analytics on how long people are using it for, and we're so blown away by the amount of people that are obviously enjoying the app. I'm very sorry it went down. It was to do with the Antelope upgrade of Wax. Broke a load of stuff on the back end. It is all fixed now. Everything's working. If you notice any problems, please let us know and we'll get it fixed. At Token Gamer News on Twitter. That'll do. John.
Cool. Well, for the latest news in blockchain gaming, NFTs, Web3, all that good stuff, head to nftinsider.io. And on socials, it's at nftinsider_io. For me personally, it's at hydropowered, HYDROPWRD, on every platform imaginable. Twitter is the best one. By the time this podcast goes out, we will have announced Apex Kings coming to Atomic Hub, which is it's an upcoming kind of management racing game. It's got licensed,
cool cars.
Yeah, it's got licensed Citroen, Celine, DS, Rover. Why not? Cars in the game. So yeah, that drop is coming April the 19th at 18 UTC. So go check that out.
Nice.
And depending on when this comes out, it'll either be during NFT NYC or just after it. Whereas if it is during, then you can find me walking around NYC with a mic in hand, interviewing random people. So hey, if you're in New York between April the 12th and April the 14th for NFT NYC, let me know or come find me with my.
Has that been sitting there all episode?
Lovely,
that?
It has been.
You didn't even move your body. That was just within an inch of you.
So yeah, you can come find me, myself and Saskia actually, and the rest of the Atomic Hub team. The Atomic Hub team have a booth. You come talk to us about Launchpad, Atomic Ads, all that good stuff. We've got some credits to give away for Atomic Ads. I think it's about $10,000 worth of ad credits. So, yeah, if you're in the area, come and say hello. And yeah, come and find me and Saskia. Say hello if you see us. We'll be more than happy to stick you in front of a camera and shove a microphone in your face. So, yeah, if you would like that to happen to you, then come and find us. But that is all from me.
Cool.
Great. Episode 62 of the Mint One podcast is a wrap. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let us know who you want us to interview next, speak to next, all that good stuff. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, a 5-star podcast review would be great. Follow us on Twitter at Mint1Pod and share it around. It's always great to get new people into the podcast. Are we recording an episode next week, Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why
I
wouldn't
hope so.
we?
Yeah, well, I'm at NFT NYC.
Yeah,
so I'm sure
we'll weave it in.
Yeah,
Even if
well,
I have to get up in the middle of the night, we'll weave it in.
I'm sure we'll be able to find a window to fit that in. So yeah, next week you'll be able to get my live reaction on the ground at NFT NYC. See if it does live up to 2022's lofty heights, but we'll wait until next week to find that out. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you again next week.